I mean, the title does say it all really. Speed is really important when it comes to production, because you were where I was a couple of years ago when I just had so many ideas of things I wanted to create but simply didn't have the skills to get my ideas out quick enough. No shade. And that is why I think these tips will really help, because they have really helped me. Number one, you do not practice. Okay, it's boring, so I'm gonna make this brief. If you wanna get good and you wanna get fast, treat it like it's a job and do a little bit every day. Also, by producing in this way, you're gonna get out of the mindset of spending too long on one thing, which I will come to later. And if you're not sure what to practice, just consider what music you like listening to, what music you want to make. Tune your ear into that sound and figure out what is going on. Take notes on exactly what you're hearing. Even if the vocabulary that you have to use isn't that complex, it doesn't really matter. Just something that might push your sound design or your structure or your arrangement, whatever it might be, in the same direction as what you want to make. You're not using presets. Why not? In my opinion, we need to remove ego from music. We need to start from scratch with every single sound we do. We can't use samples. We can't sample other people's work. In fact, it takes quite a lot of originality to be able to take a sample and flip it in a way that nobody else has done before. Just work with what you've got. There is nothing wrong with that. And segue, that leads me really nicely onto my next point. You don't know enough about sound design. There are two schools of thought here. Number one, it doesn't matter. All I want to do is use presets and I don't want to tweak them. That's absolutely fine. Or alternatively, you want to be able to start with a preset and yet understand a little bit or just enough about sound design to be able to tweak it to make it your own. But what we're talking about is understanding just enough so that you can see what's going on, you can see what's happening with the waveforms, you can see what's happening if there's any wave tables, if there's any analog, if there's any samples within that sound. You can see what's going on, you can see what modulators are working and what they are affecting, and you can kind of turn things off, turn things on, crank some settings up and see what you think, and of course dial things back if you don't like them. I remember the very first time somebody spoke to me about sound design and I was like, pardon? What? Why should I care about this? You should care because it enables you to tweak things as to how you would like them to sound. And that is so helpful if you want to sound individual. You're not printing your MIDI in place. Bouncing in place is pivotal because it forces you to stick with what you've got, and it forces you to commit, and it forces you to say, actually, the sound that I have is good enough. And if there's anything I want to do in terms of tweaking afterwards, say, you want to take out some frequencies with an EQ, whatever it might be, you can do that to the audio you've created. You don't have to do it in the MIDI. You haven't customized your keyboard shortcuts. This one's an interesting one because I kind of go through phases of doing it, and then I kind of go through phases where I'll take the long route. And I'm not just talking about customizing, I'm talking about using the keyboard shortcuts as they exist already. For example, in Logic, Apple Shift R reverses the audio. Control up on the arrow keyboard transposes up, and if you want to transpose down by a semitone, control down. That last one for me genuinely changed so much. Particularly if you're a singer or you're working with somebody who sings and you need to record their voice, but they're not quite hitting the pitch they really need to, transpose down and tune up afterwards. And I'm well aware there might be purists who might be watching this thinking, this is the very reason that girls should not be producing. Because ultimately, when people listen to music, they're not listening out for the intricacies and the details, they are listening for the vibe. Or unless your listener is a producer, in which case, no, they are definitely judging your snare. But if there is a particular thing that you find yourself doing all the time, check there is a shortcut, and if there isn't, make one. You can do that within your preferences. You are taking far too long to choose the right samples. This kind of harks back to my point about bouncing in place or printing your MIDI. You want to get the sound right, and I get it. I'm not saying don't do that, obviously, but I am saying that if you just spend too long cycling through a bunch of kicks that all kind of sound the same, and you're thinking, oh, is it that one, or is it that one, is it, just put one of them in the project to get your idea out and sort out the sound later. As a side note, another way that I've really helped myself with efficiency is making sure that I've labelled and correctly sorted and organised all of my samples. I just have what I need, taken the time to delete ones that I never use and things like that, because if I haven't used them in the past 6 months, chances are I might not use them. Unless they're Jingle Bell samples, then I will use them once a year and once a year only. You're rushing and getting too frustrated. I understand, you've got a great idea and you just want to be able to just hear it. But if you find that you're getting just really annoyed at yourself about not being able to do it, about your skills just not being tight enough to get out what you need to get out, what you need to express, because the longer you sit in that funk getting annoyed at yourself, the longer it will take to go away. Bonus point that I forgot to talk about, Apple loops. There is a truly brilliant YouTube video that Genius did with Charlie Heat, who produced Undercover by Kehlani. It blew my mind, to be honest, because a lot of that song, a lot of the beat is actually just Apple loops. So my bonus tip is essentially utilize the resources you've actually got in front of you, because they're there to help you, and there is no shame in using a bunch of loops because everyone else is doing it. And there you have it. There are my reasons why you're a slow-ass producer. If there are any other tips that you can think of that I haven't mentioned, please do pop them down in the comments, because it might be something that could help me get quicker, but also might be something that could help other people, and that is what this channel is all about. So in the meantime, like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.